Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to some as well. Thank you for joining us, Tom and I, here this morning in our Sip and Solve session around minimizing supplier disruption in your supply chain. This is Lee Mao. I'm a Senior Product Manager here for Business Information Services.
Hi, this is Tom Hayes. I'm a solution consultant. I've been in the commercial data space for the past 3 decades and just have a passion about helping customers solve their needs through data and solutions. Look forward to speaking to you today.
Yeah, awesome. More importantly, what are you sipping on over there, Tom?
Well, I've decided to go with a mocha. I had a little sweet tooth today, but I'm also sipping on some hot tea. I have a scratchy throat, and we're coming up on cold and flu season, so I'm just trying to enjoy both here now.
I hear you. I'm just sipping on tea today, some chai tea.
All right.
So, yeah. But really, I'm really excited for today's topic, actually. And really, what prompted me to kind of think about this way is also just thinking back, or most recently with the Apple event and kind of the new Apple products being launched, right? Mm-hmm. So many new products for them, and they have a really tight window to be able to announce it and then deliver within the time frame. So I'm just thinking about how much goes into their supply chain management, ensuring that everything runs smoothly from behind the scenes. So now I'm really interested in see how potentially we could help some of our procurement professionals here try to not so much get to exactly where Apple is today, but what are some steps that we definitely should be considering as well?
Yeah, I agree. Like I mentioned, I've been in the commercial data space for most of my career, but what I sensed, my observation was with most companies was the supply segment, procurement departments was often overlooked by many of the organizations. And I think back to a procurement specialist or subject matter expert told me once that an organization, a company could lose a large customer, their largest customer, and they could adapt, find additional revenue sources, find new customers. But if they lost a critical supplier, it would cause a big disruption to the company, and in the worst case situation, cause business failure. And I thought, we have on the screen there a scenario that it was a healthcare hospital provider that their sole critical linen supplier, they unexpectedly filed bankruptcy, shut down their doors. And
Wow.
the struggle for that company, or the hospital, was that supplier had a strong record with them, performance-wise, so on. Part of the problem was they weren't monitoring the data at that time, commercial data. It just, again, internal KPIs, everything was going well, and they didn't have a secondary supplier. So when that happened, they had to rely on the existing inventory in place. But the other problem is when you're trying to vet a critical supplier like that, especially in an operating room environment, that's a detailed vetting process. So that caused ripples through that organization, top to bottom. They had to re-identify and look at existing processes, but definitely a good example of supplier disruption.
Wow. I mean, just think about it's a critical linen supplier. I think that ultimately impacted the whole supply. There's all these domino effects that occur, right? So, I kind of touched on, this probably scenario probably occurs, depending on how often it is, the type of size of an organization and the type of supply chain that they manage, right? I think we've talked about this a little bit too as well. And I think it sounds like there should be 4 key buckets our procurement professionals should really try to focus on in terms of managing supply chains, right? And that's what we brought up here on the screen as well. Do you mind kind of walking us through each of the different phases you think that we should really try to help them focus on and what they should be doing in each phase?
Yeah, that first part on the left-hand side, that new supplier onboard, it's just a key for that process should be in place. And we're going to talk a little later about compliance, that it's a key component. You have to have a strong onboarding vetting system in place. So you're capturing a lot of documentation. Sometimes that's done through an online portal, or sometimes it's just communication with the customer. But as you can see, some of the items there, those are key. You want to identify that you're with a strong organization that has the capacity. They have the product or services that can meet your needs, and it does start up front. Mm-hmm. And then moving forward, the risk assessment part. And this is one area where that hospital missed out on. They did do an initial check, but as we'll talk more, it was key to look at some of the financial scores, the predictive scores that would predict performance down the road. And then also even many companies have to look at linkage. Is this business related to any other existing suppliers that you're dealing with? And then diversity is a key. It's definitely a goal with a lot of organizations that you need to have there's probably a goal of a certain percent that your suppliers must be of some type of diverse nature. And then OFAC, we'll definitely talk more about that.
Yeah, those are really key elements as well. I think the one that you called out there seemed like the financial stability score, which is really about identifying risk potentially for the next 12 months around possible default, right? I think that probably likely would have seen that coming at least for them specifically with this supplier. I think that's part of it too, right? I think now we move on to the second or the third bucket here around ongoing monitoring.
Sure, and I think that was the biggest miss for that organization was they filed bankruptcy. And this is where Experian helps out with how we collect data, timely information that we would have notified them of that bankruptcy within 24, 48 hours. And via our solutions, this is, we see financial risk, public record filings, UCC filings, where they debarred with the government. We can provide those type of alerts. And I feel a great feature we have the ability to let customers customize what they see first.
Yeah.
Instead of a slew of alerts, they prioritize what's most important to them, and then they can select right at the top of the list what they need to act on.
No, that's a great point. So it sounds like if I'm understanding correctly, the bankruptcy indicator alert would have notified them within, say, 24 hours immediately if this occurred for that business, right?
Correct.
And then that financial stability risk score that we see there, if they're monitoring either through batch or they also have alert mechanism, but through batch, we should typically see from a month over a month, be able to see that risk elevate, I would assume. Maybe not
Exactly.
a month over, but at least from a quarter to quarterly basis, at least if you're doing that.
Yeah.
Or conversely, if you do the monitoring right, if you set up one alerts, basically you would then get alert when those rating would change,
Yep.
either up or down, right?
And that, like you're saying, Lee, that consistent batch process will allow them to trend and view that portfolio more proactively versus a reactive type approach. When something happens to disrupt that supply chain,
Yeah.
we can help in advance if they're seeing those risk trends. And then on the other side, companies want to grow. So if they're low risk and you're seeing positive signs for that customer or with that supplier, can that supplier grow with you as your organization grows as well?
Oh yeah, really great points. And then we have this last bucket here about supplier analysis.
Yeah, and that's just us working closely with the procurement department because they, especially, again, we're providing help on spend analysis, the risk, the linkage, but they have a lot of key internal KPIs that we can help map back to help them be successful. So again, we can help. That's a nice little circle we have where Experian can play a part in every piece
Yeah,
of the
absolutely.
procurement process.
Absolutely. No, that's a great example. I've heard of others as well, right? Maybe we could jump into the second one too, because I thought this was really interesting too.
Yeah. So, we have what's in a business name and millions of dollars. And this was a scenario, a global oil and gas company, their procurement department was negotiating contracts with multiple divisions or subsidiaries of the same business. And the big miss there was, again, time's important, just internal cost and so on. But they missed out on contract negotiations, bulk agreements, national agreements that they could have taken advantage of. Because, again, that's where businesses, they all have growth objectives. And this is where a procurement department can play a part in a company's overall organizational goals. And we do that through our linkage. Yeah. So, again, we can leverage our company hierarchy data and help companies fully understand their spend, but also help them on an ongoing basis through our refreshes, be able to aggregate their spend on a regular basis and be up to date with that supplier portfolio.
Honestly, I love this example because I think what we talked about previously around assessing that supplier risk previously with kind of the 4 different buckets, right? And that really helps focuses on that supplier and that disruption. But this is what you're showing me here is almost a different view of how we could potentially save and reduce costs in other areas of the business as well.
Right.
Right. So one's about kind of protecting disruption for your main business revenue. This one is also kind of the before that, or
Right.
in addition to that, what areas can we save money in terms of for our business as well? So I think what we have, right, is the corporate linkage hierarchy here, right, tying different
Sure.
branches and headquarters, et cetera. Where do you think we should really try to focus on in that prior example?
You know, in examples like this, you'll see a branch. A branch often has a similar name as the headquarters, but sometimes you have trade styles that come into play that you might not recognize. So again, that's where we help organizations out with identifying DBAs and also trade styles and connect them to the legal name. But that last one was subsidiaries. That's where companies miss, where you have that 50% or greater ownership together. That's where you want to be able to compile, you know, the spend, understand that spend more. And then again, those negotiations that go on a regular basis, can you get some quick wins from a cost reduction?
Yeah.
So,
Totally, because I think you mentioned to me, if you want to look at the very bottom right-hand corner here, right, of that slide in that example, I think it's really important to say, hey, there's a DBA name potentially here that they may be talking to you with and they may be using. But ultimately, through the corporate hierarchy, we could tie that association back to that headquarter location or even the branch location to make that tie. I think that was a really interesting note that you mentioned to me that I honestly constantly always talk about with our clients as well.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think the other trend that I saw too as well, and definitely, you know, helping with this too as well, Tom, is really around procurement now, the procurement department and also compliance department as well. It seems like there's a lot of consistency or similarities in the different types of checks that both departments are doing. And believe it or not, I've talked to some of our clients too today, is that while they are doing similar checks, they're very independent of each other. It almost seems like here's another area of opportunity, a third area of opportunity potentially. We could help reduce some of the costs and overhead that's maybe overspending in terms of what you're doing as part of your supplier risk assessment. So with knowing your customer around the compliance side, they're doing a lot of the same checks as well. So everything I think we've covered previously, they're doing as well. So it's a possibility we should try to consolidate that spend together. And then how do we utilize that data that's using on both sides of the departments as well? And I think there's also similar challenges across both departments in terms of how you want to speed up or expedite that process. So on the very left-hand side, we saw some challenges with there's a lengthy review process. So hopefully when you're consolidating, that lengthy review process you're doing, right, will be recognized on both sides of the teams. In addition to that, you could probably also consider combining your budget. How do we automate that as much as possible? So when I say automation is combining with APIs, right, that's one way as well. But then also the bottom right-hand corner, as I mentioned, you start building that risk model. Right. So I know right now it says KYC risk model, but it should be really just a supplier risk model. And that risk model may be either judgmental scorecard or just building your own custom score, right? Both those things we could help with, but those should be considered automation as well, because ultimately what you arrive at is hopefully a score to help you make that decision. Yeah. So we know that with these type of challenges across both departments, you have the way to automate. In addition to that is how do we combine some disparate data sources both teams are using and combining into basically, if you want to, the way I'm thinking about it is you combine it all together as part of one automation solution as part of your overall risk model, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and like you mentioned, Lee, so we spoke earlier, an onboarding process is definitely the first stage, but ongoing due diligence is just as important because you need to avoid, any breach of compliance, any risk of investigation to your company, because that's just going to cause, if you get a compliance investigation, if you get regulatory fines, what does bad press to you mean to your company brand and reputation?
Yeah.
And all that affects the bottom line. So again, we can definitely help customers from that end.
Absolutely. So there's definitely a few cautionary tales I think we explored today and potential how we could avoid that reputational and disruption to your supply risk, right? So honestly, I've learned so much today, Tom. I think our time here was relatively short. I think we've covered quite a bit. So to really essentially wrap it up, seems like we really want to have everyone try to focus on creating this onboarding process in terms of a risk supplier, let's continue to make sure we're also monitoring the different risk checks that we've already done up front. I think the big point that you mentioned is how do we diversify that supply chains with your first example so that we could avoid, even though there may be a disruption, we have a quick way to avoid that with having a different supplier, right? And how do we automate and combine some of the things we're doing both on the compliance side and the procurement side, using automation tools like APIs or even using judgmental scorecard to help make a quicker decision. And it seems like corporate linkage is definitely a key area we could also focus on. As I mentioned, that third bucket is basically, how do we reduce spend overall by consolidating when you're working with multiple, the same supplier, multiple different businesses, right? So, we touched on quite a bit, but I think we're only scratching the surface. So if anyone has on the chat with us today, we'd love to learn more. We'd love to talk to you, right? So please feel free to reach out. We have multiple different ways to be able to do so. Here's a couple of links for you to kind of stay in the loop with us. But looking forward to hearing from everyone and really appreciate everyone's time today.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your coffee and have a great day.